have the Ink Kitchen, which is a media company trying to make a community out of people that decorate and make garments, et cetera, and bring people together and learn from each other. And we're sponsored by the Impression Show, who have, in their infinite wisdom, began to have more things happen here while you would come except get stuff sold to you. So one of those things is the shop talks. We're having them at all the big impression shows, and we're going to have broadcasts of the other ones at even the little impression show this year. And we're also sponsored by Haynes and Hirsch, who have right from the start, when no one would come to these, support us. And now, yesterday, I think we had like 300 people for the water-based printing one. They were everywhere. So anyway, thank you for coming. It's my friend Kriya Stevens, who is from Econscious, and we're going to talk about sustainability. She's got a few slides. She's got a lot of knowledge. We'll have a little bit of a presentation, and then questions. And if you're too shy to ask questions, Kriya will also be around afterwards for the shy people to ask questions. All right, take it away, Kriya.
Hey there. Glad everybody could make it. I feel like, as a brand, the last time you and I talked was in Atlantic City, and generally when we're talking about sustainability, I try to keep things real upbeat, just inspirational. I feel lately, I really feel like we need to step it up. Like we had 411 parts per million carbon. That's a record in May of 2019. We got Australia. This is a buzzkill. This is going to be a buzzkill. I'm just going to tell you right now. We have Australian fire. I'm from Northern California. We just went through fires. We're going to be living on a very different planet. So I guess the question that I ask myself when I'm awake at 3 in the morning is, how does somebody that wants to live a life that is not detrimental to society, how do I go about doing that? Especially when you're part of a capitalist system. How do I make a living and not destroy the planet? So these are all very...
These are good questions, I think, Kriya.
These are good questions, but I mean, they are serious questions. And the other thing that I was thinking about being here at the show, I feel like we are in a bubble. In a way, we're in a bubble because we walk the floor and we see eco-friendly, recycled, and to us, it might feel like, okay, we're really getting somewhere. But when we look at organic cotton, it's still just 0.7% of overall global cotton production. So we've just scratched the surface. And so we still have a long way to go. Basically what I wanted to come here and talk about was like, well, why is it better?
All right, talk away.
I know, and I know that Rick works with Farm Aid, so he has a soft spot for farmers. There's a lot of interesting fibers that are happening. Organic farming's been around for a long time. When I encounter people that are a little bit suspicious, like, is this just something you're trying to sell that's newfangled? And I always want to go back to the idea that, hey, this is how your great-great-grandparents would have farmed, okay? Using crop rotation, using tilling. Basically, what you're doing is keeping the soil healthy, right? So then we had industrial farming come in. We had genetically modified seeds come in, and we just basically, what we did is we just stripped the soil. We just did monocrops, and we didn't look at it as like a holistic system. Why does all this matter? I mean, it matters for a lot of reasons. Our soil is actually playing a big role in our ecosystem, right? So if you have healthy farms, you're keeping when you're not growing, let's say, whatever your crop is, soybean, cotton, when you're not growing that, you're keeping an alternate layer of vegetation there, right, to keep the carbon sequestered in the ground. And when you're doing that, when you have a mulched, I know this is like people are going to start glazing over, but I just want to talk about soil health in that when you have a healthy soil and you have mulch feeding the soil, then you have bacteria feeding off of the nitrogen, and you basically, the soil is doing what industrial farming is using chemical inputs to do, which is, to basically just ends up stripping the soil of all of its nutrients. So I brought this slide over here to kind of give you a sense of how organic cotton is related to climate change. The more farm that we convert, the more we can help sequester carbon, because we're keeping healthy soil. And
it's funny you talk about the eyes glazing over thing. So Farm Aid's big about the soil, and they're like always trying to make T-shirts. It's like, nah, forget it. Like you can't really make dirt and soil all that interesting, or it's hard to, but it's important. So go on, please.
Yeah. So basically, when you don't have healthy soil, you have basically you are emitting more carbon.
All right. Bring on the slide.
Okay. So these are just some nice stats about the difference between organic and conventional. When I'm talking to folks about it, and it's not like organic cotton is the only interesting sustainable fiber. The reality is cotton is great for T-shirts. So as we're finding new interesting sustainable fibers, cotton's not going away. So if we agree on that, then let's find a better way to cultivate it. And so the other good news, I guess, advance the slide, because I want to actually get to the slide that talks about, well, we can leave it there for a second. So the big news that I wanted to share with you guys is in 2017, 2016, we had a 10% growth in global organic output. So that was good.
That's all crops, or you mean cotton?
Cotton. I'm only talking about organic
Just
cotton.
Okay, organic cotton. Okay.
But I'm giving you the good news, and then I'm going to give you the bad news. And then in 2017, or 2018 to 2019, we just finished out 2019, 56% increase in organic cotton production, right? So, and then if we look at this next slide, should be, so while we're seeing a big increase in production, I just wanted to show you where we were at before 2008 and the economic decline. So this right here shows you, we're at 250,000 hectares, and then you see you have the the crash. And so one of the impacts was you had production of organic cotton go down too. I mean, the implications of that crash are just so far-reaching. So even though, and it doesn't show last year, which would have had a big increase, we're still trying to get back to where we were before we had the financial crash. So with the 56% increase this year, I would say very soon we'll be back where we were in terms of production. And that matters because every farm that we convert is going to sequester more carbon than conventional farms.
And why do we want to sequester carbon?
Because 411 parts per million. So you guys know 350.org with Bill McKibben and all. They say 350 parts per million is where we need to be at for carbon. And so the last 6 years have been record-breaking heat. And we're expected to go up another 0.5 Celsius in 10 years. That could have really devastating impacts. So what these T-shirts that we're making and sourcing and using actually play a critical part, because we're talking about, a crop. And so what kind of crops are we going to support?
There actually are other things besides global warming, too. I mean, so...
Just one part of it, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if most people know, but so when you grow not organic cotton, and the cotton is ginned, meaning it's purified or whatever you want to call it, they take the cottonseed products from that and they feed it to dairy cattle usually to increase the milk fat. So that if there's poison of a fertilizer or insecticide type, that gets into the food chain as well. So it's not just a clothing issue, it's a food chain issue.
It is. So we're talking about what...
And it also poisons the water.
It poisons the water, right?
And it's also a labor issue. So if, a lot of people care about how the shirts are sewn. I wish they cared more about how they were printed. For example, we're a union shop. But
it's a plug for the union folks there.
The labor in farming, if you use pesticides and fertilizer, guess who gets poisoned?
It's true. And then
So it's a labor issue as well.
Well,
so, I tell a lot of people
anybody who's
that.
coming in contact with it,
Yeah.
agricultural workers,
Yes.
the people that are processing it, anybody is going to be exposed to harmful chemicals.
But I get customers that care about the labor, and then I am able to engage them when I start talking about the fact that farm workers are going to be poisoned if they don't use environmentally responsible shirts.
Right, and so that brings me back to a really interesting question. Econscious has been around since 2006, and we've always taken a very optimistic sort of approach. And now I'm starting to, because you don't want to freak your customers out. Like, you don't want to be the Debbie Downer. So you've got to find a way to talk about it that's inspiring, but also not skipping out on the fact that this is really pressing issue at this point. And so that's something that you would navigate, and then the other thing too that I know that people have had success with is when they're showing their customers options, they're just very low key about showing organic and sustainable. They just put it right by other products. They're not being, zealots about it. They're just starting to offer it with everything else they offer. That can be effective. I think what happens, and it's certainly true for me, I'm letting the customer drive the conversation, right? So that when I'm going to go look for something when the customer asks for it versus saying, here's what you want. So it's a fine balance. And I think, Rick, probably in your shop, you have a progressive customer base.
Not only.
Not only?
No.
Okay. But you probably have enough of those customers that you're able to do that business. But when somebody comes in, it's just about price. Are there ever times when you try and introduce other products, or is it just like...
I don't know. You do what you can when you can. If I see an opening, if I see an opening, I take it and I try to convince people. If they're interested at all, I tell them what all the variations mean.
Yeah.
There's even some basic things. I think a lot of people think organic means like natural, which doesn't mean anything. And I think I do a lot of education just right from the start. No, organic means a very set of specific things that you have.
Agricultural practices.
Yes, and then there are certain companies like Econscious, you don't have to tout your own company, I will, that have all the certifications for where the cotton comes. Because there's a lot of cynicism because there's so much greenwashing.
I
so
think
that
you're right.
You have to talk about, you have to be transparent. So where do these shirts come from? What are the certifications? What does organic mean? And I think all of that is come from a trustworthy company. So like your company or All Made, I do all the investigation and due diligence.
And I was out on the floor and talking to people. I saw there's a new shirt on the floor that is mechanically recycled cotton. that's not dyed. That to me is super compelling because the wet processing is one of the parts where we run into funky processing, right? So, and
you
then
have a very large company in the industry, Sanmar, really making a push in 2020 for more sustainable methods, more certifications for labor. I don't think any of their, standards are probably what I wish they were, but it's a step. It's a step.
I mean, I think it's great, and that's why. So I went over to talk to the All Made folks, and I was like, okay, if scrappy companies come along, it is going to push the big guys. So that's where I'm like, okay, it's going to wake people up. It's great for small companies to do things, but it's when the big mills get involved that it starts to be very compelling.
No, I think if there's some momentum, it's a good thing. I mean, for a while there, what you said, there was a momentum the other way. And so Anvil dropped their organic shirts.
They had hoodies, too, that got dropped.
Gildan bought Anvil, and they dropped the organic. Gildan bought Comfort Colors, and they had Orem Organics, and they dropped that. And so,
well, Important Co. used to have, that's Sanmar private label, used to have an organic.
Right. So
shirt.
all these things all dropped at the same time.
And I feel like it happened, I don't know what year people started dropping, but I do think it was around the downturn.
Sort of monkey see, monkey do.
Yeah, and I do think, it's like if there's not the return on the investment, unless you have an internal advocate, some kind of zealot who is pushing organizationally to be patient, but the demands for turning a profit are real.
I don't know. It's not. A lot of the people I know just sell the cheapest shirt as cheapest way they can. I don't know. It's not a really great business model. I don't know them to be rich, most of them. So, I mean, you got to find something to differentiate yourself. If you're educated on these things and can offer something other to your customers,
right,
I think that you can make more money in the end.
Right, and your competition can go and get that same exact shirt anywhere. But the other thing I wanted to backtrack on, I think another reason why people maybe they don't talk to their customers about these products is because they don't feel confident. Right? It's like if I don't know 100% what I'm talking about, maybe I just don't talk about it. Hey, that's never stopped me. So I wanted to talk about the limitations of language, the word sustainable. Okay, right? This is my pet peeve. This is like a rant is what's about to happen. So we have agreed upon language. This is a big umbrella to describe what we're talking about, and under that umbrella is a lot of different things going on, whether it's, it's water reduction or it's trying to reclaim resources that would normally not get recycled. Whatever it is, a lot goes in there. So when people go, what does it mean to be sustainable? Literally what it means is that you are using resources today without compromising the ability of future generations to use those resources. Okay? If you think about what that means, I would argue that is an impossible calculation to make. And I'm not just saying that, to be hyperbolic. I'm just saying that would be very hard to know all of the impacts of what you're doing today and how that's going to translate tomorrow. So I'm not crazy about the word sustainable because I'm not sure you can ever say that because
I always think perfection is the enemy of good.
I know and I just said that twice in the booth today because people were just these people that come in and they want to convert their whole line, and then the more they go into looking at embroidery threads or how to print, it can be overwhelming. But so just so you know the literal definition of what it is to be sustainable, and we all just agree on the limitations of language and that it's a big umbrella.
I mean, clearly some things are more sustainable than others. If you make something out of hemp and you can grow more after you make it into a shirt, that's different than pumping out oil, which will eventually disappear.
It is.
And
It is. So we have, if you guys are ever interested in doing research on this, we have the Higg Index, right, by the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. It's mostly in the outdoor field, and they've gotten together and tried to measure. So they give each material a score, and the higher the score, the better. And when I went in there and took a look at, and we're talking about transportation, we're talking about cultivation, processing, the whole enchilada, what impact this item has had on the environment. So we had a non-woven polypropylene bag that was in the line that I was always like, when I would present, they added it to the line before I was working for Econscious. So when I do presentations, I didn't like the bag, thought it was a horrible bag, so I would just say, this bag is reusable, and then deadpan it, and that's all I would say, because I thought it was a gross bag. Years later, the Higg Index, they've measured, how much water, how much transportation. This is like non-woven polypropylene is one of the highest rated materials, so.
You were wrong.
I was wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I was wrong. But it just kind of blew my mind because like intuitively you feel like what we saw right before the crash, the whole show had, beautiful pictures of bamboo, and everybody was talking about bamboo. And then the FTC came in and said, hey guys, you got to actually change your labels. You have to say rayon from bamboo because, there's something sexy about bamboo. But the reality behind it is it's just rayon, and it's a really chemically caustic process.
Actually, there's different processes for rayon, and some are terrible,
right,
and some are okay, and most of them are terrible.
Right, but you have the modols,
Yes,
the tensols, the lyosols.
yes.
This is a different animal. These are lensing fibers, and they are taking the wastewater and recycling it. So it's a closed-loop system. That's a different thing, and you're going to pay more for that, and that's the right way to do it.
Right.
But my point is that you might have like an intuitive sort of just like, oh, it's bamboo or it's cotton, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the least environmentally impactful thing. That was my long-winded point.
You weren't here for our water-based panel yesterday. I started it saying that water-based printing was not all rainbows and unicorns, and we played my friend's shop's promo, which is basically a heavy metal thing by a band, Goat Whore, and there's like the devil reclaiming screens and burning up the press in the end, and it's like, you can have fun with this. It's actually
Goat
can we
Whore.
show that again?
He's like, you want me to pull that up on the fly? Because we do need a little pick-me-up. If we play some, was it Goat Whore?
Yeah.
Okay, that'll pick us up, and that's a good societal collapse music, to celebrate
How
the end.
about questions, actually? How about that? Unless you have something pressing to say?
No, just because, Rick gave me a soapbox, so I'm just going to say if you guys are here, because this is something you're really interested in, I would recommend reading Drawdown. This is top 100 things we can do for climate change. This is a mind-blowing piece of work. Number 6, educating girls. So we can buy organic T-shirts, recycle content, but there are all these other really compelling things that are unexpected. Proper disposal of refrigeration, just like there's a whole host of solutions. So I've been trying to, even though part of me says, we're probably doomed, I'm still with every last breath in my body, I'm still gonna try and do my part, even when it feels overwhelming, even when I'm not sure it's gonna make a difference. I'm gonna keep plugging away and getting more people on board. And if we don't have another crash, then we could keep this bar chart going up, and we could
It's going in the right direction, Kriya. It's going in the right direction.
With us. So I'm actually excited.
Years, you know?
I am excited that we're moving in the right direction for our industry.
All right. Any questions? Elaborate what the crash is. The economic crash meant that people, they thought, and I don't even know if it was true, but the companies thought that people wouldn't pay for organics, and they all dropped organics in their line. So organic production went down after the economic crash of 2008.
And then in general, we had prices go up, right? Because it's supply and demand. So there was less out there, and it got more expensive. And we're still, trying to make our way back, because the big hope is if we can get to economies of scale, we can get to a place of parity where, an organic cotton T-shirt is on par. You're not paying such a large differential in price. But again, we're talking about 0.7% of global cotton production is organic. So we're way far away.
Those small percentages, though. Does anybody know in this room or the space what digital printing percentages of all printing?
Direct to garment.
Direct to garment versus screen printing.
No.
I think it's like the biggest thing ever, right? It's 4%, right? There's a trend. There's momentum here. That's why all these digital presses are here. So momentum is a huge thing.
I forgot to talk about hemp. I talked to more people.
They'll have to come to Atlantic City to talk about hemp.
It's a teaser. It's a teaser. Okay.
Hey, Brett, what's the story? Possible or not? All right. It's on mine, actually, but... All right, check out Inferno Screen-Printing if you get a chance, and their promotional video using the band Goat Whore. So he's a guy that sells, water-based printing, and it's not just to like touchy-feely Californians. It's kind of a cool thing that he does. It's not. It is for everyone. I would say 98% of the jobs I do is with water-based inks. Because that customer does want a soft hand. But the way that I don't know how you talk, if I were to come into your shop and ask you about water-based inks, hey, Rick, are they environmentally friendly? What would you say? Somewhat.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
I mean, the thing about water-based is there's a lot of waste. So I did a job years ago for Aveda, and
that's a tough customer.
Threw out 22 gallons of ink afterwards that went bad because we couldn't get it reliably, and they were. This is where sustainable.
But it's gotten better, though, right?
It has gotten better, but it still doesn't store like Plastisol. So you use every last bit of Plastisol and put it back, so it's reusable in some ways.
Right, it's not going to dry
up. And I don't see people putting bamboo mats in their car. That's the same stuff. The rubber mats, the plastic mats in your car are all made from that stuff too. So it's just not as important as everybody makes it to be, and it's partly your methods. And water-based, I always say, you're going to drink it? Because it's,
I think that's like bamboo, where it sounds more eco-friendly, like bamboo.
I mean, mind you, I made an ink. If you go to the inkkitchen.com and you look at the very first post,
I made edible ink, ladies and gentlemen.
Ink that was all organic. Actually, all organically created, and it was safe enough that I printed the shirt and ate the ink.
And I emailed you and said I had a customer that wants to do.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for prime time. It was like an experiment.
Now
you push the envelope.
Yeah, because I would love to. So we want to do a capsule for a brand, and so what we found is algae ink. But so far, and it's bananas. So there's a British company that did T-shirts with it, and they are selling their T-shirts as biodegradable because it's got this algae ink. And this company out of, I think it's called Living Inks, out of Colorado, is trying to make a screen printing ink with algae. that will be
There was actually
less
people growing
toxic.
cotton that was colored. There was
Yes.
blue, green, and brown heathers that were, over time, they were
It's subtle.
genetically not modifying it, but they were breeding the cotton to be a color,
color.
actually. And so they didn't have to be dyed. You got to have experiments to push the envelope. You're not probably going to get rich making colored heather shirts, but somebody has to do these things. Thank
Yeah.
God people have innovation in their blood.
Right. The
All right.
people
All right.
pushing
What's the goat horse story?
Are they still trying? What a dedicated team. Other questions? Anybody out there? Yes.
Let's talk a lot about cotton fibers. I was wondering how synthetic fibers.
The question is about. We were talking about cotton. What
A
about
lot.
other fibers, not cotton?
Yeah, so that's a good example is Almade, where they're using recycled poly. And we blend, primarily what you see folks doing when they're bringing synthetics in is recycled polyester. So we do it, Patagonia does it. And there are folks out there that will talk about, because if you think about what it takes to get that recycled, there's a lot of transportation. But when I've researched it, when you compare recycled polyester to virgin polyester, there is pollution and there is energy consumption, but it's less than its conventional counterpart.
Better to put a water bottle in a shirt than in the ground, but that doesn't mean it's the best idea that came down the
Well,
pike.
but the other thing too, in the beginning with Econscious, I did have some really hardcore hippie people that were like, why are you putting synthetics in your products? And I was like, it's about color and shape retention. Like, you want to make a product that is going to have a long life cycle as well. I don't know if that answers your question.
All right, I think we got to end this.
You're kicking me off? The big cane
Yeah.
is coming to pull me off?
Anyway.
I got a booth to break down. I'm going to go get sweaty.
Now you're going to wait 5 minutes, so if anybody shy wants to ask you a question, they
Absolutely.
can. All
But
right.
I'm bummed about goat horror.
All right. Thanks for
Hashtag.
coming. If you want to make some environmental support, there are some wonderful.
Ooh, yes. I got one of these. I'm going to frame it.
Posters. Famous designer
donation.
Aaron Draplin donated it. Famous screen printer Andy McDougall printed them, and
All the proceeds
remember
go
to-
to Surfrider.
in fact, they go double because Sanmar actually said they
That
will
is-
match every
that's so
donation.
dope.
So if you want
Okay.
to take a poster home, any donation.
I'm going to get another one, Rick. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for coming.